When people think of Chinese sci-fi, do they think of Alan Turing's Depression? A cute flying talking bat? Night journeys? Wistful, forgotten childhood summers? Well, if they don't, then they should, because our guest for this episode is Xia Jia, and we're talking about her upcoming crowdfunded book, A Summer Beyond Your Reach. It's our second time having an author on the show, and although I'm really excited to get you guys listening to the interview, the call I did with her, let's first do the plugs incredibly swiftly. I have a Twitter you can follow, @AngusLikesWars. I tweet about mostly this show. The show has an Instagram that you can follow. It is @TrChFic, TrChFic. You can support the show financially on Patreon, and you'll get access to bonus content, including a show I did just recently with Dylan Levi King, kind of a follow-up. It's the first time I've ever had a repeat guest, and we went a little bit off the script. We didn't just talk about literature. We had a little bit more of an unstructured, casual chat. So that's on the Patreon there for you. For a one-off donation, you can go to Buy Me a Coffee. Help me get coffee. Help fuel me. Links for both of those will be in the show notes. Without further ado, let's listen to the TrChFic news. And then, after the news, we can listen to Xia Jia and what she's got to say. So our first news item is a very exciting little online publication, if you can call it that. It's the Paper Republic roll call of books translated from Chinese in 2019. So I've talked up Paper Republic a lot, and I can see just from the little picture that they've posted on like the banner of this page. What have we got? Waist Tide by Chen Xiufan, The Supernova Era by Cixin Liu, or Liu Cixin, The Redemption of Time by Bao Shu, Broken Stars from Ken Liu. So a lot of sci-fi there. And what else can I see? I can see Mike Fu's new book, that'll be in our second news item. I can see Broken Wings by Jia Pinghua from Elaine Charles Asia. I can see Life by Lu Yao from Amazon Crossing, and I can see the first Jin Yong Legend of the Condor Heroes book from Maclehose Press. There's some stats as well on this blog that are quite interesting. So the number of books that Paper Republic were able to count translated from Chinese in 2019 was 28, which is a significant decrease. 2018 had 40. Another stat, only 4 of the 28, so 1 in 7 of these books were from women writers. So obviously there's a whole breadth and wealth of Chinese literature that could be translated, but 6/7 of the books that are getting published from Chinese into English are by male authors. There's the stats for that. There is some more encouraging news, I suppose, regarding literary prizes. The Society of Authors TA First Translation Prize has a short list of 6 novels, and 2 of them are actually translated from Chinese. Our second news item, so really exciting news, a book from Taiwanese poet/travel writer, I think she is. San Mao, a collection of her stuff, has been translated by Mike Fu and published in English by Bloomsbury. Stories of the Sahara. I'm seeing here you can get the ebook for £14.26. You can order a physical copy for about £1 more. What have we got here in the blurb? San Mao, author, adventurer, pioneer, born in China in 1493. She moved from Chongqing to Taiwan, Spain to Germany, the Canary Islands to Central America, and for several years in the 70s to the Sahara. Stories of the Sahara invites us into San Mao's extraordinary life in the desert, her experiences of love and loss, freedom and peril, all told with a voice as spirited as it is timeless. But yeah, that's the end of our news segment for today. Let's proceed with the episode and listen to Xia Jia. So I'm on the show with one of the rising stars of Chinese science fiction, who writes under the pen name Xia Jia, and under the name Wang Yao, she's also an associate professor at the Xi'an Jiaotong University. So Xia, I think it goes without saying, it's absolutely awesome to have you on the show. How's your day going so far?
Quite good, thank you. I'm very honored to be invited here to talk with you and all of this invisible audience.
Yeah.
Yes, and this year I'm as a visiting scholar at UCR, so I'm living in California. So the winter here is not bad.
That's cool. Yeah, we're having a rainy winter here in Scotland right now. It's probably the opposite of California. It's not very fun.
Right now it's rainy too, but generally speaking, it's like the weather here is more sunny than most of the places I've been.
I can imagine.
Mhm.
So you've got something in common with a few of the past guests we've had on for not just the sci-fi season, but also the TrChFic episode. And that is that I met you at the Leeds Genre Fiction Symposium. Although in that setting, technically maybe I was talking to Wang Yao and not Xia Jia, and we don't have a Turing test to figure that one out.
Aha.
But anyway, how did you find that symposium, and then the rest of the trip you had in the UK, and then all your travels after? How's it all been?
The symposium was really cool because the new Chinese writing study center, right, in Leeds University,
Yeah.
it's a very small but adorable academic community. So I was very happy to be there to talk about my own writing and Chinese science fiction in general, and have this opportunity to meet some new old friends and also make contact with some new friend there.
Mm.
And after that, but it was a little pity because of the full schedule of the symposium, so that I didn't have a lot of time for sightseeing in
Mm.
Leeds, because we heard that it's very lovely city.
Yeah.
But after that symposium, I and Stanley Chen, we went to Manchester for the Manchester Writers Festival, and we participated a public activity there. And after that, we have extra 2 days for sightseeing in Manchester. It was also a very lovely city because it's a good European city for walking. You can walk from place to place.
Mm.
And yeah, and I visited some very famous places like the library, the museum, and also I also visited the memorial park for Alan Turing there. It's
Mm.
a very little tiny park, but still lovely.
Yeah. Just in Canal Street in the little gay village. It's a nice sweet
Yes,
spot.
yes, yes. And
Mm.
also we visited at the Gay Street.
Yeah.
Not the same day, but the night after, before I
Oh,
visited the Memorial Park.
that's
Because
a good spot.
it was a crazy night. We just made use of that night, and I and Emily Jing, my one of our lovely translator, and also
Mm.
Stanley Chen, we went to visit a very famous park close to our hotel, and we
Mm.
met two lovely old men, and we have a lovely talk, and
Mm.
then they invited us some like a whiskey, and we
Oh,
and then they invited us to go to the gay street to for some like the for some
that's
like
awesome.
the interesting experience there. Yeah.
Right. So
Mhm.
I should just say, as I mentioned in the Waste Tide episode, Stanley Chen and Chen Fan,
Yes.
that's the same person. So that was yourself and Chen Fan in the Manchester Canal Street having whiskey. That's an interesting tale.
And we and the Chen Fan and I we also watched the Joker in Manchester.
Amazing. Um,
Yes.
and we should say as well, if Emily Jin, if you're listening, hello to you. She got in touch with the show. It's fantastic that again. So there's yourself and Chiu Fan, a couple of the rising stars of Chinese sci-fi, but then Emily Jin herself, along with Ken Liu, I guess she's one of the a big name makes it sound a bit maybe celebrity-ish, but when I was doing my studies of Chinese sci-fi and now as a reader, that's a translator name that pops up again and again, and it's nice when you talk to the real person that you see on these pages, whether it's online by text or by a call. It's a cool thing. But I think I'm talking a bit too much. Let's go to the next question. So just like it was on the Waste Tide episode, the guest on the show is also the author. So we're doing one of your books, Xia. We're going to talk about A Summer Beyond Your Reach, which is it's not published yet, is it?
Quite soon.
Quite soon, and it's a very interesting sort of publishing like the route this book has taken to getting produced is an interesting one. So I wonder if you could tell us that story.
Yeah, because the things began from like my cooperation with Neil Clark.
Mm.
He's a very kind and yeah, a professional editor in the U.S. and he has his own magazine, Clark's World. And that's also like it's a venue I published my first English story there, and then we began our like long time cooperation. And I think that it was last year he began to establish his own publisher house, which is a small one, and he more interested in like the like science fiction in other languages except like English market. So he wanted to try something new for the market. So he talked with me about like the opportunity for publishing my first English collection, short story collection. Because like this kind of collection is not that attractive to the big publisher. So he thought that it can be a good thing to like to try if this kind of like publication would work. So he chose like to establish his progress as a Kickstarter campaign. And this campaign started in the beginning of this year, and it was very well organized, which impressed me a lot because it was my first time to really participate this kind of Kickstarter campaign, and we soon got collected enough money to pay for mainly like the translation fee and also like the copyrights of my story.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of this project is like we talked about, for example, how to choose the stories, or which story to choose, and also we discussed about like the title for this collection, because there was like a novella included in this collection. Its name is A Time Beyond Your Reach.
It's a very good title.
Yes, and so we want to choose like the similar one, like a very poetic title. So we choose like A Summer Beyond Your Reach, because my pen name Xia Jia, the Chinese character Xia means summer, and summer is also like my nickname.
I guess that's like kind of like if you have an English name, it's Summer, right?
Yes.
I want to ask you more about Summer later. I just want to say, so when I learned about this Kickstarter, it was when I was doing my research for my Chinese sci-fi master's dissertation. And a thing I noticed when I had a proper close read of the Kickstarter page was the date for when the Kickstarter started and the date for when the money goal was reached. I noticed it was really fast that the project hit the target and then hit like the bonus target. So obviously Neil's found a lot of readers who are really interested in, I guess, not just Chinese sci-fi, but your stories. So it seems like it's a really great success story in Kickstarter publishing.
Yes. All of this process just out of my expectation.
Right.
It's like the magic. Oh, and also, as you mentioned, like we very successfully got the money we need. So we also set up some like the bonus targets. And the third target would be like another anthology entitled New Voices in China. So that would be an anthology special for some like the upcoming writers in China who never had any foreign language translation. So this anthology can be maybe like a good starting point, like a stage for them to publish their first English story. So that anthology, I think, would be upcoming very soon in the beginning of next year.
Fantastic. Before I get on to asking you about your own stories, I just want to say my own piece of, I guess, praise or a comment about Clark's World. So again, what I found on my dissertation was if you're looking for English language sci-fi from China, translated stuff, it's from either Head of Zeus or Tor, depending on if you're in North America or the rest of the world. There's one book, a Wang Jingkan book from Amazon Crossing, and then everything else, it's Clark's World. And a lot of that stuff is really great for people who want to kind of try some Chinese sci-fi, because a lot of this, I think maybe all of the stories they're online just as web pages that you can read. A lot of your stories, Xia, are up there, but then other stories from the more famous Chinese sci-fi writers, and then people who have been first published through his website. But also, if people like, I guess, audiobooks, a lot of these stories have been recorded in audio form. And I think for podcast fans, there is even a Clark's World podcast. So not all the stories there are Chinese sci-fi, but they're all sci-fi. And yeah, it's just an amazing thing. I think the writers and the fans of Chinese sci-fi call Neil Clark Angel. Is that right?
Yes, yes. We called him like a 天使 angel.
And
Which
then,
means he's always so kind to do all of these things.
and I think we mentioned in the Waste Tide episode, there's a holy, kind of like a holy trinity. There's Neil Clark, the angel, Ken Liu, the Buddha, and maybe...
Buddha,
and
Buddha Ken Liu.
Yeah, and Liu Cixin, the Godfather.
Oh my God. That's good, very good, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to try and make that a thing. Mm-hmm. Anyway, let's move on to questions about your stories. So this is my first time doing a podcast episode where the book is an entire collection of short stories. So I'm going to try something a bit experimental. Since it's sci-fi, I think experiments and sci-fi are a good pair. So what I've done is, for all of the stories, out of all the stories that are going to be in A Summer Far Beyond Your Reach, is it A Summer Far Beyond Your Reach or just A Summer Beyond?
A Summer Beyond, yeah.
Oh, I put the word far in there. That's my mistake. Anyway.
You can repeat it again.
Yeah. I'll leave the mistake in. I think it's a charming mistake.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's some stories from this collection which you can already read either in print, like Tong Tong Summer, that's in Invisible Planets, or several of them are readable on the Clark's World website. So I've read those ones, and for each one, I've just prepared one question, although I might have some follow-up questions sneakily. But before I ask the question, I'll just ask you, Xia, to introduce kind of like really briefly the idea or the plot of the story. So shall we give this a try?
Yeah, let us try.
Okay.
Let me try my best.
Yeah, give it our best shot. Okay, so the first one is the psychology game. So what's this one about?
So the psychology game is it's about a story happening in near future, and it depicts like a reality TV show. And in this TV show, you can see one patient and one therapist. They're having conversation. So it looks like a psychological therapy, but the point of the story is that all of the audience, they have to guess whether the therapist on the other end of the hidden behind the screen is like a real human being or an intelligible or artificial intelligence software or like the chatbot. So the whole story is discussed about like this reality TV show. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So my question I have for this one, it's a kind of a question on a theme, but I can introduce it by saying, when I did the previous episode technically this would be 2 episodes ago, when I was doing the Fei Dao story, I sent the link to my girlfriend and she read it. And when it came time to do this episode with you and I was preparing, I was reading some of the Clark's World pages. So I thought I'd introduce my girlfriend to these stories by saying they're about the Turing test. And she said, what's the Turing test? And I said, don't worry, this story will literally teach you what the Turing test is. And I thought that was interesting because your other story that's not in this collection, Goodnight Melancholy, I think it also kind of teaches you what the Turing test is. And you've got another story, one written in English, called Let's Have a Talk, which has a similar idea. So maybe I can briefly introduce the Turing test. It's a conversation-based test where you're testing if an AI is really an AI, and it passes if the human member of the conversation doesn't know the difference between, can't tell if the other member is an AI or robot or not, then it passes the Turing test. So you've got there's kind of this communication, conversation, Turing test theme in these stories, and 2 of them, I think, Goodnight Melancholy and this one, the psychology game, they can actually teach the reader in an instructive way what the Turing test is. And this reminded me of your essay that introduces is one of the introductory essays in Invisible Planets, because it mentions
what makes Chinese science fiction Chinese.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Because it taught me a lot of stuff about the history of Chinese sci-fi, the early I think, some of the early Qing dynasty stuff, and then the kind of middle period where I guess it would be in the Mao era, just after the revolution, where Chinese sci-fi was similar to Soviet Union, like Soviet-style sci-fi, which was often used to, I guess one of its uses was to teach scientific concepts. So to ask a really open question, were you partly using these stories to kind of explain a concept from science, or was that not really your purpose?
Yeah. Because one thing is that this story, the psychology game, actually it used to be like a byproduct of Goodnight Melancholy.
Right.
So when I was writing the story, the basic idea is about like the depression of human being and the chatbot. And because it was inspired by some like the news reports about like how some of the official people, they are trying to use this chatbot to create some like conversation to help the people who suffer from depression.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this idea to write a story about like this kind of idea. And the Goodnight Melancholy, it was combined with like two storylines. One is like a non-fiction style. And another one is like a fiction style. So the non-fiction style is about like the some like documentary elements on Aaron Turing, what he experienced in the very last years in his life. So during I was writing that, I was also developed some like the ideas about what would happen after that, what would happen in near future. So I have this idea of like this this TV show. But after I finished the Goodnight Melancholy, I felt that maybe the better idea, maybe I would better just like extract this part of TV show and make it like an independent story. But of course, these two stories, they have like the common shared opinion of the story. So as for your question, I think it's not my main purpose to to give people like lectures,
Right.
what is like some like the scientific idea. But one thing I think is more like interesting is that that is like the way I'm using this like non-fiction style writing. But actually they are like they are creative non-fictional writing.
Yes.
Because the materials, they are not real, but like I fabric this kind of thing and pretend that this kind of thing have already happened, or that would happen in the future as a real like a social event. So by using this kind of writing style, I feel like I can combine more different kind of discussions into my writing. So for like the fictional style, fictional storyline, I can more focus on the like emotional or like the story arc or character arcs of the main character, what happened to this main character and what he have learned from this kind of thing. So it's more focused on like the, how to say, it's like the creative writing or literary elements in the story.
Right.
But on this like non-fictional narrative, which can give me more open space to discuss and of course also to introduce some new ideas to the audience. So I think it's a good way to balance a story.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's some really good fusion of like scientific concepts, and especially like I think in some of your stories, especially when you go for the emotional stuff, it's really good. Like I know I told you kind of awkwardly at the Leeds author event that I think I don't know exactly how many of these details I gave you, but basically as I'm getting older and becoming an adult, movies make me cry more and more. Books very rarely still. I think it's harder for books to affect me, but from the sci-fi I've read, not just Chinese sci-fi, all sci-fi. When I met you, I told you only two things made me cry. Something I can't spoil near the end of Death's End, the last three-body book, and Tong Tong Summer from Invisible Planets. But I just started reading Broken Stars and Goodnight Melancholy. Oh my God, it got me. It made me cry. So I think that's a testament to how good a handle you've got on those emotional aspects and putting them in sci-fi stories, which is quite special.
Yeah, it's also kind of Turing test.
You're right. There is a hidden
To
Turing
test
test.
like your ability of empathy as a human being.
Right. Yeah. Well, I proved I'm not an android, so that's helpful to know.
And also there's one thing I want to concentrate that as you just mentioned, the
Okay.
Mao or Soviet
Mm.
era writing style. There's like some debate on this writing style, but one disadvantage of this style is that because its main purpose is to give lectures to the readers, so that it's kind of like a limit the development of the storyline because it has
Right.
to like give some like main character who is like the old professor or a scientist and who is like who is like the introducing this kind of like magic scientific inventions to some like younger character, like a little boy or like a student. So which just built up some like the convention for this writing style and then became like a cliche.
Right.
So after that era, in like the new era or like the post 1990s science fiction, as Chinese science fiction, most of the writers they just try to explore how to break up this kind of convention and to develop more diverse characters and story plots. So for me, I think my exploration is also an approach to try to deal with this dilemma of writing, because
Right.
I don't think like giving lectures to the audience is readers is a bad thing. It just depends on how
Yeah.
you give this or like the what's a if you can like give a really good excellent lecture which is really attractive to your readers, it still can be a very intriguing element part in your story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
TrChFic in our episode, he actually reminded me of the English word for this. I forgot it. I think you can use it as a noun and a verb. Info dump. Do you know that one?
I don't remember.
Oh,
Fudong?
so it's info like information and dump put together,
Oh yeah,
like
yes,
your
yes,
info
yes,
dump.
yes, yes.
And yeah,
Infodom.
it's
Yeah.
the magic of sci-fi is it's actually acceptable or even good to have some info dumps. It's just like you said, how you do it.
Yes, maybe
We
not
could,
to insert this infodrop in like conversations of the main
yeah,
characters, but for example, like using some non-fictional writing, like the news reports or like a
mm,
part of the papers, which can be a very good and also professional, more professional
mm,
way to like the give the information. Yeah.
yes, we could talk about this a long time, but I think we
Oh,
should move on
yes.
to Tong Tong
Yes.
Summer. So, can you introduce Tong Tong Summer to the listeners?
So this story happens in summer in a normal Chinese family in near future, and the main characters are the grandfather and the granddaughter. So because of the grandfather, he's like the broke his leg and could not move around. So the parents of the granddaughter, the Tong Tong is the name of the granddaughter. So the parents of Chong Chong, the employed or like they employed like a nursing care robot to take care of the grandfather at home. And then there's like a series of events happened after the robot came to their family. I don't want to spoil, but I want to say that mostly if you heard of this kind of beginning of the story, maybe you will think about like some like the Black Mirror style ending, which
Mm.
can be like a very dark ending. You can imagine, but I promise that my story will give you like a very unexpected twist,
Mm.
and which is different from the Black Mirror style. Yeah.
Yeah. The last episode I uploaded, but which will be two before this one, I had a guest who's also from my hometown, Dundee, and he's just a huge fan of Chinese sci-fi. And he said one thing he likes in it is there are there's an op in a lot of the stories, there's an optimistic view of technology. So even in some of the darker stories, maybe like Liu Cixin's stories, the depiction of technology isn't as skeptical as it might be in Black Mirror, where people have criticized Black Mirror, basically saying the story for every episode is phones equals bad, or the internet equals bad. But anyway, my question is totally different. It's not really even about the story. It's about the summer, the theme of summer, because like you mentioned, summer is in your pen name. It's the kind of English name that you have, and it's appears in a few of the titles and the contents of your stories. So I guess I'll preface this by talking about the season I used to identify with. So I was born in winter, and I used to think winter was the best, and I thought I was very cool for liking the cold, dark season. But then, like as an adult, I found I just like summer a lot more. You get more time of day, there's more sunlight. More sunlight does make me feel more happy, but I still feel kind of attached to winter. So I guess my question for you is, can you tell the listeners about your connection with summer, and do you have like a second place season that you like almost as much?
First thing is that I was born in summer. I was born in June, and then, like I said, the midsummer. And when I was growing up, I have many like beautiful memories about the summer, and also like because my birthday was very quite close to the International Children's Day.
Oh, right.
Both of these days are in summer, like the beginning of summer. So my like a sweet memory is like when I was a kid, my parents like brought me to have some good stuff to eat. Basically like the like a Kentucky Fried Chicken or McDonald's.
Nice.
Because there used to be very fashion in China, like in 1990s.
They must have
And
been very new.
yes, and very crowded. A lot of
Right.
like the kids were brought by their parents to celebrate the Children's Day, and they brought me some like the presents, mostly like the books or science fiction books or like or popular science books for me as a birthday present. So also I have many important things happened in China for me, like the graduation and like the departure of my important relatives. Like my grandfather, he's also passed away in summer.
Right.
So the total summer is basically based on my real experience with my grandfather, and I tried my best to use my grandfather as a prototype for the main character and build up this character as a very ordinary old people, but still very like a strong and stubborn hero, science fiction hero in this story.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's like in the ending of the story, there's some many like a description about summer. Like the summer is the best season. You can do this, you can do that. You can just swim and or play with your friends in summer. Also, you can have a lot of like dreams in summer.
It's funny that you mention graduation, because a lot of my happy memories of summer are also about like ending school, because the school term ends in early summer, starts again in late summer. So although we might think like which season symbolizes the end, winter, because it's the end of the year, it's getting darker. Actually, I think a lot of these big changes, journeys away from home to home, starting school, blah blah blah, it all happens in summer. It's
Yes.
literally a thought I just
In
had
the
about
summer
30
vacation.
seconds ago. Yeah, a lot can happen in a holiday.
Yes, so as you mentioned, that many important things happen in China. So in summer, for me, I think summer is like a season full of stories, full of hopes, and maybe sometimes like sadness, bittersweet experiences. So at the end of my story, I mentioned that there's like
Yeah.
still plenty of time in summer. Summer never ends because
True.
summer is like it's a time for you to explore more.
I can teach you a Scottish phrase, because we're quite far north, so our summer days are very long. So there's a phrase, roaming in the gloamin'. So roaming, like wandering, walking. Gloamin' is a special Scottish word. It means kind of the period in the summer where the sun is very low in the sky, but it just stays there a long time and you have the long evening light. And it's kind of
Yeah.
associated with those feelings of the day never ends. Da, 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 da. I have another quote as well related to summer and winter that means a lot to me. It's from Albert Camus. So this is translated English as well, but it's from French. I just want to read this on the show because I love it so much. So it goes like this. Again, this is not my words. This is the French philosopher Camus. In the midst of winter, I felt... I don't know if you can hear my dog there.
I can hear that.
Yeah, I like it when
Never
he gets
mind.
in the show. It's okay, I'll start again. In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer, and that makes me happy, for it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me there's something stronger, something better, pushing right back. And I think it fits quite well with your stories, because there is a lot of sadness and darkness kind of lurking in the back of your stories. And I don't know it. So that's a quote I've loved for a long time, but I think it speaks well to a lot of your stories.
Yeah, thank you. I love this
Mm.
this poetry. Yes, the summer inside you, the
Mm.
summer beyond reach, but still inside you.
There you go. Perfect note to end talking about Tong Tong Summer. Let's go to the next
Yes.
one. Night Journey of the Dragon Horse. So this is one which is available in Visible Planets. Is this one also on Clark's World? Do you know?
Yes, I think this story is firstly published in Invisible Planet and
Mm.
then republished in Clark's World.
Right. And can
Yeah.
you tell us what it's about?
The story is more like a fantasy story.
Mm.
The main character is a mechanical dragon horse, and he had been fallen in sleep for many years, and he woke up again after the distinction of human being in Beijing. So when he woke up, he just witnessed like the waste of the world, and then he tried to walk back to his hometown, which is Nantes, right? Nantes in France.
Right.
The hometown of Jules Verne. And during his journey, he met a bat, and they have a very lovely long conversation during the journey. So this is basically the story.
The bat's quite a cute character from what I remember.
Yeah.
So my question here, it's another kind of not really about the story, more about the themes. So I'll start by asking like a pre-question. Did you ever watch or hear about a TV show called Firefly, an American sci-fi show?
No, not yet.
Right. So it's directed by Joss Whedon, and it's like set in the future where humankind are in space or whatever. And although there are no Chinese characters, the cast occasionally use like a Mandarin phrase, and I think the idea is he's got an understanding that in the future there's going to be probably a lot of Chinese culture is going to enter the global culture or whatever. And
Yes.
so I think it's interesting for me because I think this is it's true. I think there's probably going to be a lot more mixture of cultures in the future, and I think China is probably going to play a big part. So it's always interesting to me when I read a future story where, especially just maybe because of my own interests, Western and Chinese culture have fused in some way. And I think that really applies to this dragon horse because it's a kind of a France/Europe China co-creation. So
Yes.
was that what you were kind of going for in this story?
Yes, yes. This story is inspired by a true piece of like how to say it's like the instruction or like the machine, because
Mm,
it will be like a true dragon horse as is depicted in my story, and it was created by a French company. I think its name is like the La Machine, which is based in Nantes.
mm,
And this dragon horse was created to celebrate the 50th. I think that it was like the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relationship between China and France.
right.
So it was in 2014, and that dragon horse was transported into China in Beijing and to for like the exhibition for like for several days. And I haven't watched that performance personally. I just
Mm,
watched some like videos online, but
right.
which impressed me a lot, like the concept and also the experience of this dragon house, because it's the perfectly combined like the fantasy and technological elements, like the Chinese and Western cultural elements all together to build up this dreamlike creature. So and also this story is like it's a birthday gift for Ken Liu.
Ah,
Because in 2014, he visited China, traveled to China to participate in like the Nebula Award, Chinese Nebula Award ceremony.
right.
And it was like maybe the second time I met him. And after he departed, and it was soon his birthday. It was like in the very beginning of November. So it came to me this idea that maybe I can create something create like a story for him, like a birthday present. And it came to me this concept of like the dragon horse because I think that the dragon horse is very good symbol as like the bridge between different cultures or different worlds. Because it's like the half blood of many things.
Right.
It's a super combination of many things. So and then I wrote his story and give the story to him, and he was very very happy, and he decided to use this story in his at that time it was his upcoming Invisible Planet anthology. So that's why this story is firstly published in that anthology.
Right.
Because it's special for him and special for that anthology. So also in the story, you can see not just the dragon horse, but also like the bat, because the bat is also like the half blood of night and the daytime, of like a bird and like the beast, right? And also other strange creatures they met during their journey, and other stories they talked with each other. Is that also like the half science fiction and half fantasy stories? So for me, it's a very happy experience to write, to think, to imagine this kind of story. It's like the crazy experiment, just to try to combine everything I feel interesting all together. And make it like a convincible, plausible for the readers.
Now, I know that in traditional Chinese culture, the bat is a symbol for something. Is it a symbol for happiness?
Yes, because like the in Chinese it's called 蝙蝠,
Fu,
and the
right.
福 is fu is for like the happiness.
Yeah, and then the bat in Western culture, it's maybe more associated with Halloween and creepiness. But I think there is a general understanding that really it's just a little mouse with wings. So making it cute also makes sense.
Yes.
And the dragons and the horses. So I have an anecdote, a story from when I lived in China. I traveled quite a lot, and I noticed quite often outside railway stations there would be statues of horses, kind of Chinese style statues. And I hadn't really, it's something I didn't expect because before I traveled, I knew very little about the country and the culture. But it was an interesting thing to see this horse that I guess I did generally associate more with Europe. So I learned that the horse, it seemed to, I think, does it symbolize travel in China? Is that right? Or am I completely wrong?
Yeah, maybe something. Yeah, like the speed, like travel, and also like because also like the dragon horse 龙马 in Chinese is a saying like a 龙马精神, literally like a dragon horse spirit, which is
Right.
like a very good how to say the good symbol of like a good spirit.
Right. So there's the horse, which has a kind of a importance in both places, and dragons too, of course. The dragon in the West is often evil or at least powerful, and then in the East it's I guess it's mostly a positive symbol. But you've taken two animals that are both meaningful in both places. So I guess it gives a bit of a double power to their combination. I don't really have any question there, just something I.
Yeah, and also I just remember that in the ending of the story, I cited a poetry from a very famous Chinese poet, 孩子. And that poetry is like one of his most famous poetries. 以梦为马, like takes a takes a take the dream as horse, or like you can ride.
以梦为马.
Yeah. You can ride something like that. You can ride on the dream as a horse. So it's talking about like the dream relationship between dream and horse.
I just remembered, so we tried to do a word of the day on the show, and I forgot to ask for one in my show notes. So maybe we could do, for a word, we could do summer, and for a phrase, we could do, was it 龙马精神?
龙马精神, yes.
龙马精神, and that's a dragon horse spirit. And
Yes.
summer is 夏, is that correct?
Yes.
So our words of the day, long ma jin shun and xia. So horse spirit, dragon, horse spirit, and summer. Okay, I've ticked that box. Speaking of tick, the next story is TikTok.
Ah, yes.
I didn't plan that, but that worked out really well. So can you teach us, so not teach us, sorry, can you tell us what's TikTok about?
This story is a bit more like a how to say a thriller story.
Mm,
So to avoid more like spoiling, I can just tell you simply it's something about like dream making and filmmaking and some crime. There's also like some crime elements inside, but I
hmm
cannot give you more.
Right. And I'll try not to spoil it at all either. My question here, this is something I mentioned earlier about positive and negative depictions of technology in Chinese, well, not just in Chinese sci-fi, in sci-fi. And I felt that out of your stories that I read, so obviously in Tong Tong Summer, we get a really not I'm not trying to spoil anything, but we get a positive vision, future vision of
Yeah,
how
brighter.
technology, yeah, of how technology can be used. But in TikTok, this is a little bit like a Black Mirror episode. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yes, yes, actually, yes. And
So,
it's intentionally
oh, right.
to,
Okay.
yes. Because this story is initially like, how to say it,
Us.
a piece of work for competition.
Right.
It was in 2015. There was like the competition held by a group of Chinese science fiction association. So it's called like a Comet science fiction competition. So the
Mm.
basic idea is like the every issue, the editor gave like a title for the competitors. And the competitors they are from like a different culture, different languages. So
Oh.
there be like there was like also Chinese and English speaker writers to participate in this competition, and each author need to submit one story based on the like this prompt, and then the editor would hire some translators to translate each stories into other language, like the English into Chinese and the Chinese into English, and then we'll publish the bilingual stories online for readers to like to give credits of the stories.
Right.
So the prompt of that issue was timetable. So which
Mm.
means I need to write a story about like something about time. So
Mm.
it came to me this sense of like a time lapsing, like TikTok, time is lapsing, which give you a very tensive feeling. And also because it's a competition, so I think it would be a better idea to more follow the convention of this kind of style, this kind of story,
Mm.
to give the dark faces of the future technology, and to make some like the suspensive twist in the story. So
Yes.
that's my basic idea of that story.
There's certainly a lot of twists in this one.
Yes.
So I have kind of a follow-up question here, which is it's only really describing the start of the story, where we have some kind of a mysterious character who keeps taking on lots of different roles by changing costume and stuff. So this is going to touch on French culture or France again, because we mentioned the dragon horse, which is from the French town of Nantes. We mentioned the philosopher Albert Camus, and strangely enough, reading this story, or at least the start, reminded me of a French movie called Holy Motors.
Yes,
Have you
that's what,
seen that film?
of course.
Right.
And you find it. It's where my inspiration came from. The
Aha.
beginning of the story, yes.
If anyone likes Holy Motors, do read the story TikTok. If you enjoy TikTok, especially the opening section, check out Holy Motors. I think that's all we should say. It's a very
Yes,
strange
yes,
film, but
yes.
it's
Sorry.
yeah, when I first watched Holy Motors, I thought, oh my God, this is such an annoying film. I don't like it. But I think if I rewatched it and looked at it from this perspective of how people play different roles depending on what the situation requires them to be, it's quite deep. So yeah, and there's in TikTok, that is one aspect of TikTok as well. So that's what I was going to say. What were you going to say?
Yeah, and I think the very important point from the Holy Motor is it depicts like the how this filmmaking or dream making work or industry became our basic like the basic power to push our everyday life. So our everyday life is already like became more and more like dreamlike or film-like.
True. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a funny thing. I remember when I did some film studies modules in university, and these academic writers would say the film makes you feel like you are the hero, lets you live in a fantasy. And I thought, no, I'm not like that. But it's total nonsense, because especially when I was a kid, I have a really strong memory of this happened in a lot of films, but especially when I saw Toy Story in the cinema. I remember getting up out of my seat and walking away and really thinking that I was Woody, the cowboy from Toy Story. So it's amazing the power that culture, I guess, not just movies, video games, advertisements, the internet.
Yeah, all of this visional culture, this visional culture, industrial products.
I think it's definitely a big difference with books. Like I said, I love books, but it's really hard for them to make me cry, and it's very rarely when I'm reading a story that I strongly feel like I'm a character. Maybe more in novels, because in a novel you can get to know someone, but in a quick short story, it's really hard for me to get attached or think I am one of the characters.
Yes, and also like we as like the same, they are like the same generation. We grow up in this kind of like visionary culture stuffs. So I also remember that when I was a very, very little kid, every night before I fell asleep, I always have had a kind of like a period of time which is like a special for myself to imagine that I'm in certain kind of story. So it used to be like a very private, personal, like a imaginary world for me. And during that process, I also I tried to invite the characters from all of different stories into my story and play with me.
Yeah.
So in this TikTok story, it's kind of like to depict this kind of version, like to. I do not want to spoil, but it's kind of like.
But it's the dark side of that.
Yes.
Totally. Okay, let's go to the next story. This is the last one, and maybe my favorite one. 6 views of a spring festival. Maybe a hard one to summarize. So just in any way you like, can you tell us what this story is about?
Oh, yes, that story I think was written during one spring festival in 2013. And when I was when I was at home to celebrate the spring festival with my parents and all my old friends and relatives, I noticed that the technology.
Are you coming? Are the police coming?
Not coming. They're just passing by.
Okay, good.
Not police, but the ambulance. Yeah,
oh, right,
okay. Forgot that part. So I just noticed that how Chinese people's ordinary life had been rapidly changed by all of this, like the new technologies, like the WeChat Pay, or like just this kind of things. So, and also this story is partly influenced by the Black Mirror.
Yeah.
Because it's more depicted like the near future vision, and more like the subtle changes of like the ordinary people. So I began to write these kind of stories. I finished after all, I finished like the 6 short stories happened in one spring festival in near future China, and depict like the different visions of Chinese people's lives in this spring festival. So the original Chinese title for the story is like 2044年春节旧事. Literally like old stories happened in a spring festival in 2044. So there used to be like very exact the time, the point of time in the title. But when the story was translated into English, my translator, Ken Liu, he suggested that maybe we should not use this 2044 in the title to give the readers a very exact prediction of that what will happen in the future. So I think that's a very reasonable suggestion.
Yeah.
So I just removed this year, this number of year from the title.
Now that makes me think. I've avoided talking about hard and soft sci-fi because I think you've talked about that in lots of other places, and it's
Yes.
got a special relationship to your stories. But it seems like to me, taking the number and the specific details out the name and going for that more literary title kind of frames the story as a little bit more soft than hard. But do you think the same, or am I imagining things?
I think some the year is a more some a convention of science fiction writing. When you give the how to say the introduction of the background of a story, you should give a very specific time of year, how to say the 2019 Los Angeles, right? That's the beginning of the Blade Runner. But as also speaking of a soft and hard writing, I think the point is that because for me in recent years, I became more and more into depicting the subtle feelings of people during the transformation of technology, not just only to introduce how this technology works, what's the scientific rules of of their function, but also try to depict how all of these new technologies were invested and to be made into some the products, and how the commercials they use these products, and how they feedback their feeling of this kind of products. So this may be more the soft version of the science fiction writing, but this part really matters because if we think about future, we should not just think about how some very powerful and professional scientists or entrepreneurs, they make use of this kind of technologies from a higher to lower point of view, but we also need to think about from a lower point of view, from the ordinary people's point of view, to think about how their everyday lives changed, and how they can maybe do something to change the usage of these technologies. So that is what I want to try to explore in the Spring Festival stories. So I tried my best to write to create these characters as real nobody, real normal people. Even their names, they're the little Xiao Wang, Xiao Zhou, the little Zhou, and just their the last name. So in Chinese culture, it's they're just really just a nobody, not very important people.
Yeah,
But
like
they're
Mr.
just
Jones, Mr. Smith.
Yes, or grandma Wang, or old Wang.
Yeah.
So they are just the ordinary people, your own friends and relatives all around you. But if you really care about their livings and their feelings, their sufferings and happiness during the process, you should just try to emphasize with these characters.
Yeah. So obviously this is everywhere in the world, people are real people, they live real lives. But I think the way here in the UK, and I'm sure a lot of the Western world, the way that we hear about China is the big stories, news. So like in the news, politics and economics. But something I told my friends over and over and over and over is, okay, China, it's different culture, different political system, but it's not as different as you think. Grannies are still grannies, granddads are still granddads. You know, there are shops, there are streets, people live normal lives, not as different from yours as you think. And I guess a lot of Chinese literature that gets translated and put in English, it is a little bit political. Or the other sci-fi we get, like Three Body, those are characters in those stories, but they're living amazing lives. So it's cool that we have sci-fi about the Xiao Wangs and the Xiao Zhous and the the normal people. It's cool. But anyway, I want to ask you another thematic question about this story, because I could talk forever about this. It's about, I guess, going back to the life and like the existential stuff, the darkness behind the summer. There is quite a lot of death and despair in some of these stories of yours I've read. And there's often some thoughts about what life means and how life is valuable. Were you going for that in your 6 Views of a Spring Festival, as well as the trying to give a snapshot of what is the Lao Bai Xing, the ordinary people's lives?
Yeah, generally speaking, I think that, yeah, really in my stories, because I just realized that there are some darker aspects hidden in my story with like out of my self-consciousness. 'Cause, for example, I had a lot of story talking about the journey during the dark night.
Right.
I just found that I just noticed that they have like 3 stories entitled with like the 夜行, the night journey. So the first one is
right.
journey, night journey of the dragon horse, and 龙马夜行. The second is like the 百鬼夜行街, the 100 ghost pirate night.
Oh,
So it's
right.
also like the travel or like the walking during dark night. And the third one is if in the winter's night a traveler, so which is borrowed from Carmen's story, but when it translated into Chinese, it's like a 寒冬夜行人.
Yixing. So that's something we won't see just looking at the English titles, but in the original Chinese, it's Yixing is there 3 times.
Yes. So which made me think about what this 夜行, this night journey, means. So actually, this is kind of like the ambiguous field for like all the ghosts to talk with living people.
Right.
So for me, I think the ghost is not that just it's. Of course, they are horrified, but also they are something with some like the potential inside, because ghost is some like which can be which can be like a symbolize the world out of beyond our reach, beyond our perception. So this kind of field arena can provide like more like potential for us to think differently, to understand like the alternatives, which is outside our common sense world.
Right. That's interesting. So I have another little add-on question to this. I'm cheating slightly. This is kind of a second question. But so in the time I spent in China, I noted, or I guess I learned the importance or the emphasis on longevity, living a long life. And I feel
Yes.
like in Europe or Western culture or whatever, of course we want all our friends and relatives to live a long time. But I think we talk about it less. I think maybe because of the Christian heritage in the culture, there's less acceptance that life is limited. There's less focus on making your life long and meaningful.
Yes.
And am I right in thinking that in 6 Views of a Spring Festival, there are longevity noodles, these long noodles that symbolize a long life? Are they in there?
I think I could not remember, because there's like one story about like a newborn baby. So so the longevity noodles can also like provide to celebrate the burning of a newborn kid.
Right.
And also there's another story about like old people, old grandma, and the celebrity for her like birthday of 90s, and there can also be a good place for like the longevity noodles. Yeah, but so in Chinese culture, I think not just like to hope for or to wish the old people to live a longer life matters, but also how to fare there with passing away people, right? So in these 6 stories, they are like the stories about young kids and the middle-aged people, and like the people fall in love, people want to build up like a marriage relationship, and also people who are really in their old age and prepare to leave this living world, and they begin to think about what they can left, what they can like to transform to their younger generations. So this is very kind of like Chinese culture.
Thank you for that answer. That is all of the questions I've got about these stories that are going to be in a summer beyond your reach. I want to ask you just a couple questions about translation, and then a couple questions about academic stuff, a couple final questions, and then I'll say farewell. So, first question about translation. I learned, so before, as preparation for this show, I looked to see if there was any other podcasts with you on them, and I found a couple, and I learned from them that you've done some English to Chinese, E to C translation, as well as having your own stories translated by other people into English. And that some of that is related to your, I guess, you being a fan of Ray Bradbury. So can you
Yes.
tell the listeners and myself a wee bit about that?
Yes, I think it was just started in 2012 when Ray Bradbury suddenly passed away
Mm,
in the summer. I thought it's just as the same in the summer, in
there you
June,
go.
I think.
Passing away and in the summer. It's
Yeah,
a theme.
yes. And that was just before my preparation to go to US to participate in the WorldCon.
Mm,
So I have this plan to go to Chicago for the WorldCon, and after that maybe I would have an opportunity to visit Bradbury in person. So that was like the part of my plan. But I was like the struck by this sudden news that he passed away.
mm,
So to like recover from that suffering, I began to try to translate his stories, mostly the stories from the Illustrated Man, into Chinese. And I kept on working for about like the 1 week, and finished like maybe 7 or 8 short stories.
mm.
So it was a very accidental opportunity for me to involve in this translation work, because before that I never thought about like the me I can like do this translation because I was not majored in English,
Mm.
and I don't think my English is good enough. But still, I think that it's like the call of like some spiritual power that you should try to do this at this point of time.
Mm.
And I think that it's a good way, because I always think that our life as a human being is kind of like like a story. There might be some very unexpected twist happen in certain points of your
Mhm.
story, and you could not expect it them. But when you experienced this kind of twist, you will realize in the future or in a
Mm.
later time that what's the meaning of that twist. So
Yeah,
it's like the revelation of your own story of life. So
absolutely.
things like that. After I finished this, like the 7 or 8 stories, I had to stop and prepare for my visa application to go to US. So I appointed like the interview at the embassy, at the consulate, and the staff at the consulate, he asked me why are you going to the US? So I answered that because I want to participate like the WorldCon. And he asked, so are you a science fiction writer? I said, yes. And he said, who is your favorite science fiction writer? So my answer is Ray Bradbury. And he said, could you give me some like the names of his stories? I said, of course. So I said a series of the titles, and he said, "Oh, cool. Have a nice day." So we end up this conversation, and I got a visa.
Well, it's a fun test to pass anyway.
Yes, yes, yes.
Mm.
So after that, I also translated some of Ken Liu's stories.
Ah,
So
cool.
more like the how to say like the recuperate, right?
Mm.
Recuperate translation, because to thanks for his translation of my stories.
Mm.
So it's just the main part of my translation.
I have another question about the Ray Bradbury translations. Actually, a question in two parts. First part is, were those the first ever Chinese versions of those stories? That's first part. And the second part is, did you share them anywhere or are they just for yourself?
So for Bradbury, he had a lot of stories previously translated into Chinese and published in different venues.
Mm.
But when I started to translate Illustrated Man, there was no Chinese version for that
Right.
collection. So I just feel just like the randomly picked that book and start to translate. So some of the stories I translated already have some Chinese translation, but I think it doesn't matter for me. It's because I just want to do this work. And after that, I think some of the stories that after I finish this part of work, I send the stories to the editor of Science Fiction World, and then some of the stories have been published in Science Fiction World.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah. But I haven't finished the translation of the whole book because later there's like an editor told me that this collection had like the Taiwanese version. So I think this. So I just think, oh, maybe I should stop here and just keep the rest of the stories to myself.
Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, anybody who's listening and can read Chinese and is a fan of Xia Jia, I guess you can go look for Science Fiction World and find those Ray Bradbury versions. That's really cool. Another question about translation. So it's about another one about Emily Jin and also Carmen Yiling Yan. So in this sci-fi season of several episodes, I've talked about Ken Liu quite a lot, and I asked Stanley Chen Xiufan about working with him. And I could have asked you the same question, but I thought it would be more interesting and a better thing to do to ask about how it was working with Emily Jin and Carmen Yiling Yan.
Yes. Because I met Emily Jin several times in US and both in China, so we are like the close friends. But I never met the Carmen Yiling before, and so I think the process of cooperation is basically just the same. Like we after they finish the translation, they send me the first version, and then I read the translation and added some like the notes or comments to discuss about their strategies, or sometimes maybe there's some like the misunderstanding, or they neglected something, so I can give some suggestion to add it into the final version. And also because I think Emily Jin is a kind of like student of Ken Liu.
Right.
So I remember that there's one story haven't published in English, but will be included in A Summer Beyond Your Reach. It's called On Miluo River, Jiang Shang, which is a very complicated story talking about I would not introduce more about this story.
Okay.
But the thing is that there are many both traditional Chinese implications and some the elements in real life in Chinese science fiction community, both included in that story. So when I read the English translation, I noticed that Ken Liu already read that version and added a lot of not a lot, but a couple of notes inside, and then I can follow his notes and the suggestions to decide what I would do next. For example, Ken Liu suggested maybe I can add an author's note to briefly introduce the background of this story. Because this story involved with Qu Yuan, which is like an ancient Chinese poet and politics in China, and also involved with a contemporary Chinese science fiction writer whose name is Liu Wenyang. So the better idea is I give the writer's notes to introduce both the knowledge of these two persons, and to make it clear that why I decided to write this story and what I want my readers to get from my story, because that story was originally just written for Chinese science fiction fans.
Right.
But for English readers, I need to give more information to explain.
Yeah.
So this is the basic what we did during this process of translation. Just give each other suggestions and sometimes ask questions. Sometimes the translators, they ask me some questions about what do you mean and what do you want to say here or there. So I just explain more in my feedback.
Cool. Yeah, I can say as a reader, it's always I don't know if every reader feels the same way, but I love it in translated stuff when there's a note from the author. I even love the footnotes. Maybe I'm nerdy, but I think it's great. And I also think it's good to not just get stuff that's been written for a Western perspective, but to get, I guess, reading the stuff that other people in other parts of the world read. But then obviously, if notes are necessary to explain certain elements, I see that as like bonus content. It's a good thing for me. Maybe other readers feel differently. We could talk about this a long time, but I want to fast forward and ask you a couple of questions about science fiction studies, since you're not just Xia Jia, you're also Wang Yao, the associate professor. Although I understand you're not a Chinese science fiction academic, you're just Chinese literature or writing teacher or academic, is that right?
Because my doctor dissertation was on contemporary Chinese science fiction
Yeah,
since 1990s. So after my graduation, my main academic interest is still in this area, in
right.
this field. But because at Xi'an Jiaotong University, the place I worked, I teach,
Mm,
there's no science fiction courses or or science fiction studies institutions. So just me, I'm alone to doing this kind of like researches. And as a teacher at Jiaotong University, I mainly teach like practical writing,
mm,
which is nothing to do with science fiction or creative writing.
mm. So when I was doing my own research for my master's dissertation, a few names of academics popped up. One was in the United States, Song Mingwei. I think he's a professor or an academic in the Chinese science fiction studies area. And the other name that popped up a fair bit, and I'm maybe saying this wrong, David Durway Wang, who I think is
Yes.
working. I think he's working in China. I do not remember which university.
Harvard University.
Oh,
I
Harvard.
think so.
Okay, so he's in
Yeah,
the States too.
he's
Oh,
like the
pardon me.
dean of like Asian studies of Harvard
Ah,
University.
okay, so he's not in
Yes.
China at all.
Mhm.
That would lead me to the next wee thing. So I think there's been some news recently. Sichuan University launched a sci-fi academy, like a sci-fi studies department. Have you heard
Yes,
anything about
I think
this?
so. Yes, yes.
Hmm. Do you know if there are any like key universities in China which are centers for science fiction studies, or not at all?
So thing is like I can give you a very brief introduction of the
Awesome.
short history of Chinese science fiction studies in
Yes,
China.
please.
So things like all of these things I think we can is started from Professor Wu Yan. He used
Right.
to be worked at Beijing Normal University, Beijing
Okay.
师范大学,
Right.
and so he started. But when it was worked there, he's like the professor at I think education studies 教育学.
Hmm.
But because he is like the big science fiction fan and a very important figure in like the science fiction community. So since 1991, he started to give some like lectures to like all the students in that university on science fiction. So that lectures became a very important opportunities for many young science fiction fans became to how to say to be attracted into this science fiction. It's not a real science fiction study, but like the close reading of science
Mm.
fiction, not
Hmm.
just like the normal science fiction
Not
fan.
just reading for fun.
Yeah, because they like the sit into, but because many of them they are not students of Beijing Normal University, but they're just students or like even graduate students live in Beijing, but they went to the Professor Wu Yan's classes
Mm.
to to learn something about like the history or like the series of science fiction.
Mm.
And so these lectures continued about like maybe 20 years or even longer. So when I was in university, when I was in college, when I was studying in Peking University, I have this opportunity to went to there to make contact with like the Professor Wu Yan and his students and other students came to that classes. So I think since 2000 and maybe six, Professor William started to direct like the master students of science fiction studies.
Right.
And then since like 2000 maybe I can't remember, maybe 14.
Right.
There was like the first like the PhD program for science fiction studies supervised by him. So I think he's like the leader of science fiction studies in China, especially in like a Chinese publication, because he has some papers translated into English, but he's mainly like the published his papers in Chinese.
Right.
And so in recent years, since this year, there were like there were three of his PhD students graduated, and they got their like a teaching job at different places. So it's like the how to say it's like the Professor William he planted the seed many years ago, and this year is like the big harvest year. So as I mentioned, like Sichuan University's science fiction academy. I think it would be mainly like directed by one of Professor Wu Yan's PhD student. His name is Jiang Zhenyu. So Jiang Zhenyu has a title like Yibo, the first PhD student of science fiction. And we also have like Erbo and Sanbo, the second and third PhD students. And right now, Professor Wu Yan he changed his job, and right now he's like teaching at Southern Technology University, 南方科技大学. And he has his own study centers for like science fiction and humanities imagination, 科幻与人类想象力 study center.
Right.
So this is a very important like the like a foundation or like the basement to cultivate younger researchers or scholars in science fiction studies in China. And also, as you mentioned, that in recent years, because of the explosion of Chinese science fiction, there are like more and more scholars, international scholars, mainly works in like the English, in the English world. They began to feel interested in the contemporary Chinese science fiction. As David Wang, because he's a very important figure to. He was originally main focus on like the modern and contemporary Chinese literature in general.
Right. So more like realistic stuff.
Yes, in recent years he began to included the science fiction writing into his own academic interest, and he gave a series of like speeches on Chinese literature at different venues. But he intentionally chose like the title for his speech like the From Lu Xun to Liu Cixin. So it's like the very important like a change of point of view to check the history of Chinese science fiction and the history of Chinese literature.
Yeah.
So to combine like to start from Lu Xun and end up with Liu Cixin. So
yeah, it makes sense in a lot of ways.
Yes.
So I guess I'm technically one of these students who got. I don't know if you can call a master's student a scholar, but I got interested in this. Oh, thank you so much. I got interested in this from an academic angle, doing my publishing master's, so more looking at the business of publishing these books. And from that angle, Chinese sci-fi in translation is really interesting because it's a lot like what you described about David Wang. The top selling translated Chinese books have, I guess, kind of switched from Mo Yan style, like literary style, maybe a little bit socio-political, often banned in China is not just from like a political angle, but from the business angle. Banned in China would be the thing you'd slap on the book to help it sell faster. And that seems to be changing or has shifted largely to Liu Cixin, and as attached to that, the rest of Chinese sci-fi. And an interesting fact, if you go on Instagram and you put in hashtag Chinese literature. I'm pretty sure it's based, so you get your recent posts where it's just based on when it was posted, but the default display is like most popular, ranked by most likes or whatever, most shares. And number one is Three Body Santee, and I think out of like the top 10, a lot of them are the Three Body Problem, or maybe something that Ken Leo is attached to. And those are now side by side with like Moyan, Yuhua, who else kind of would be in there, Zhang Ran, stuff like that, more literary stuff. So it's just really interesting to see where the future is going to go. Like, will other translated Chinese genres come in? Is it just Chinese sci-fi? We don't know, but it seems like, based on what you're saying, the way the studies angle is blossoming, hopefully the Chinese sci-fi keeps succeeding in China and worldwide, because, I don't know, at least on a personal level, I love reading it, so I'd love for it to keep exploding.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Let's go and see.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
So very last questions. Here's the second last one, although this is a two-part question. Part one, what are you reading right now? And part two, are there any books, they could be sci-fi, they could be Chinese, they could be not Chinese, they could be not sci-fi, any books at all that you would like to recommend to our listeners?
Speaking of like what I'm reading, because this year as my residency at UCR, so I sit in some of the lectures of science fiction. This semester, I sit in like 2 science fiction studies lectures, and a very unique, like the experience is like to get to know more science fiction stories, which used to be not that popular in China or haven't been introduced or translated into Chinese, especially like the people of color theme of science fiction, because which also made me realize that in the past, when Chinese people talk about like Western science fiction, this so-called Western is mainly focused in like the U.S., the American tradition. Yes. So here in the U.S., because like the UCR, it also has this very strong tradition of science fiction studies, especially in this like the international or like the people of color science fiction studies. So for me, it's a very good opportunity to make access to this like invisible words for me.
Right.
So I read a series of like this stories, and also I watched some like movies on this topic. So I think there's like for example, there used to be like the Get Out and the Us, which both of them are like the more very already a bit like a famous, right? And also there are like some not that famous works like the See You Yesterday, which is like the black people's time travel story, and also another one is called a Sleep Dealer, which is like the Mexico main characters. They are like a Mexican migrants experience, I do not want to spoil, but near future metropolis. So I think to not read, these are not the books, but to watch this movie is a very interesting and experience, and which can also expand my own horizons of this science fiction world. So I want to recommend these 2 movies to the listeners.
Cool. Well, I have to ask you now, as a very proud Scottish person, have you read any of the sci-fi books by Ian Banks?
Ian Banks.
He did the Culture series.
Maybe I can only recognize his name from Chinese translation.
Oh my gosh.
It's very awkward.
Okay, I don't know, but I will look that up later and find his Zhongguo Mingse, his Chinese name. But he's it's definitely like Western style sci-fi, but he's Scottish and he's from, I guess, Fife, a county, like a province very near where I live. So I always recommend him. Last question. Is there any of your own work or places where you share things online that you'd like to promote apart from just Summer Beyond Your Reach?
Right now I have a Facebook account,
Mm-hmm.
but and also my username for Facebook is also Xia Jia.
Right.
So if you feel interested, if the audience feel interested, you can try to search for my name. But I'm not using this kind of social media a lot. So maybe there's just like randomly updated. And as for my work, this August I just finished a new short story. Oh, just I forgot to introduce my other like a series of stories.
Okay.
It's called Chinese Encyclopedia. I remember that I introduced that during the Leeds University's symposium, right?
Right.
So that's like the pickup stories about near future China, and it's also like some like a Chinese version of the Black Mirror, but not that dark.
Is
so
it
basically,
a little bit similar to your six views of Spring Festival? Similar kind of.
Yes.
Feeling.
Actually, I think the Spring Festival and also the Tonton Summer can be regarded some like the starting point of this Chinese encyclopedia series. But the latter one is would be consisted by like 12 stories, and with like the one main character who she's like the female academic who experienced a series of events in different cities of China in 1 year. So one story for 1 month. And I think that this August I just finished a new story for this series.
Cool.
And that story will be published in 12 Tomorrows, which is like an anthology edited by MIT Reviews.
Ooh.
And will be published next year. So my story will be like the one of these 12 tomorrows.
That's very cool.
Depicted by writers from different countries. And the title for this story is The Monk of Linyin Temple. So
Is that Linyin Temple near Xihu in Hangzhou, right?
Yes, that's Hangzhou Temple. So
I've been there.
So that's a very beautiful place, right? So the Chinese title is 灵隐四僧. So the story will be something to do with like the technology and also the Buddhism, the Zen temple and the Zen monk. So I think that it's something to look forward to.
One of my strongest memories from Linyin Temple, it's not sci-fi, but an example of the old culture meeting the modern world. It was the first time I saw a basketball court in a Buddhist temple.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was showing, my dad was visiting China. I showed him, and I was like, "Look, Dad, the Buddhist monks play basketball." And I think he said, "Yeah, why not?"
Yeah, why not? And right now the monks, they are living a very quite modern lives. But also, I think it's interesting to imagine how they organize their lives, their everyday lives. And how they like balanced this like tension between technology and how to say like the Buddhism style of life to looking for the inner peace.
Cool. Now I know that I said I wouldn't mention hard and soft sci-fi, but I think I have to get this in because I mentioned it in previous episodes. So would you say that your Chinese encyclopedia is going to be a good example of porridge sci-fi?
Yes, because as I mentioned, I think I mentioned in the Leeds symposium, right? I already tried to expand the definition of porridge sci-fi.
Yeah.
Because it's original, more like something softer than soft science fiction, which means more involved like the fantasy elements from, for example, Chinese traditional culture. But recently I tried to involve the more like alternative elements rather than traditional hardcore science fiction into my science fiction writing. So for example, this like the non-fictional creative non-fictional writing can be also like the part of this like porridge element. Or like the ordinary Chinese people's life can also be like this part of this this exploration. So answer would be like yes. I try to use the Chinese encyclopedia to try to explore more, to try to involve more diverse elements into my own science fiction writing. And maybe I can use like the Chinese encyclopedia to replace the part sci-fi, which can be like a new tag for my writing.
It's cool.
Because the Chinese encyclopedia is from, I think it's from, I just can't remember, original from like a Borges short story, talking about like a very strange Chinese encyclopedia, because it's like a totally chaos of how to divide things into different categories, right? And then folk in his like the words and things, 词语物, right? Words and things.
Right.
And in the beginning of his book, cited that conception of Chinese encyclopedia to discuss about how our knowledge have been organized during the history, and how could we actually imagine like the other way of like this kind of organization. So for me, I think my own writing of this Chinese encyclopedia should be a process of exploration to try to involve more diverse things.
Awesome. It's funny that I think this writer, Borges, he's come up a few times in the show before, and so has Latin American literature. And I think we could probably talk about it for a very long time, but I probably do have to say goodbye about now. But it's been such a great chat. Thank you for being on the show. I'm sure this is a great episode for the listeners. So yeah, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much, and thanks for all the audience.
Indeed.
Thank you for listening.
Well, another huge thank you to Xia Jia for coming on and making such an amazing show. That was fantastic. I think this will be either the final or the second to last episode of the sci-fi season that we've been doing. If I do one more, it'll just be by myself. I don't think I'll do another sci-fi guest episode. I'd like to have a crack at doing one on my own. It's been a while. I probably won't be doing another one until we hit 2020, but again, never say never. I might quickly record something on a wee sci-fi short story. We'll just have to wait and see. Of course, the plugs, we have to do these before I can stop speaking into the microphone. So, to support the show financially and get access to bonus content, there's the Patreon account, and for a one-off contribution, there's Buy Me a Coffee. Links for those are in the show notes. If you want to follow the show online, there's my Twitter account, Angus Likes Words, and the Instagram, TrChFic, TrChFic. But of course, the best way to promote the show has nothing to do with the internet or money. It's about telling your friends about the show. If you know someone who might be interested in listening, or someone who likes books, anyone really, tell them. Tell your dog, tell the chatbot that is also your therapist, tell the plucky little bat that flies around whenever you go off on an existential night journey. And with that in mind, I'm about to go off on my own. Good night, and 再见.